Today on Humanize It, I have the famous and infamous at the same time, Kelly Griggs, who is the CEO and founder of Navigate Real Estate in Sacramento, California, predominantly and specifically like El Dorado Hills and that whole hub, right, Kelly?
Yeah,
So I think it would be awesome just to give everyone a lay of the land of who you are and what your story is. I would love to hear a little bit about you and your background and how you started Navigate to start.
sure. So, daughter of a real estate broker. So, grew up in the family business and swore I would never do the family business. And so, I went pretty far away, not really, into wholesale lending and did
Mm,
that for the first part of my career until the market crashed. And then jumped back in on the real estate side and said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be the best at it and just put all my effort into those things.
got it. You negated the professional poker player part that I know. So I think that would be cool to start on. So did wholesale lending, did that whole thing. Where did the professional poker thing come into play? Because you have like a bracelet, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I have a ring, a
You have a
WPT
ring.
champion. Yeah.
Okay.
So, it it was for a job. I was in a predominantly male industry, and to get into that C-suite, you had to get some attention, and poker was the hot thing, and everybody was playing it, so I hired a poker coach, learned how to play, and asked, "How do I get recognition from this?" It was either a WSOP or WPT, and I said, "Cool, I'll do that."
Okay. So you used poker as a way to get into rooms that you weren't currently in.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you win
Well,
a WPT title, you get invited to the CEO's private game.
okay. Well, that's cool. For those of you guys that don't know, when I was in Las Vegas for Zillow Unlock recently, Kelly was playing in a poker tournament and I was terrified. And Kelly doesn't even know this. She was like, you should come play poker with me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose all of my money because I'm not very good at poker. So, side note, if you're ever at an event with Kelly and she invites you to play poker, she may or may not be a poker shark. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate. I will
Cool.
take your money.
I love that. So, what was in wholesale lending, had a little junt as a professional poker player, and then
Well,
started Navigate.
it ended up being an incredibly useful skill because,
Oh, I'm sure.
you couldn't really get a work. There was hundreds of people out there trying to find jobs in the mortgage industry.
Sure.
And at the time, I was traveling on the tour and there were $10,000 buy-ins. So the guys I was traveling with were like hedge fund managers. One was
Mm.
a partner at K&L Gates. That's Bill Gates's dad's old firm.
Oh, wow.
And so I got really like, is this a great idea? You're a woman. Let me know what you think. And so I kind of got into that whole Silicon Valley group and started thinking, well, I have ideas. Maybe I could put something together. And at the time, I just really was playing poker to make money. So,
Interesting. So,
yeah,
used it as a springboard, it sounds like.
yeah,
So, when did you go from, so correct me if I'm wrong, started as a solo agent, right? And then decided to
yeah.
start building out a team and company and stuff.
Mhm.
What made you take the jump from solo high producing agent? I think a lot of people struggle with like they're making so much money as an agent that they're like,
Yeah.
why in the hell would I want to go start a team? What was going on in your brain where you were like, hey, I want to go from solo agent to team leader now to brokerage owner? Like, what did that journey look like and what caused you to go down that path, you think?
That's really going back to the poker story. So I was looking at what these companies were getting funded for, and I'm like,
Sure.
gosh, I just need a great idea. At the time, I was a mom and I decided to go back into the real estate space. And then when I went back into the market, nothing had changed. So
Mm,
everything that I was doing for my dad, we were still, turning in listings and having someone manually input them. There was no fantastic marketing back then, and so I just started whiteboarding out all these ideas on how I could disrupt real estate. And so,
mm.
that journey was super exciting for me. That opened up doors in Silicon Valley. I did like the whole Shark Tank experience, in Silicon Valley, and I actually got funded for a small real estate startup. That was
Wow.
super exciting. So now I'm playing poker, doing real estate, and whiteboarding out a tech company with India in the middle of the night. It was just over capacity. And someone else I played poker with introduced me to a new startup company in Silicon Valley. Didn't have a name yet, but it eventually turned into Side. So
Hmm.
I was one of the first founding partners with Side. And there were 7 of us in a room. And I was able to sell all of those ideas. I traded them for what I call magic beans, which is stock in the company, and worked as an advisor for the
Oh,
first few
cool.
years. Yeah. And
So it sounds
so,
like
yeah,
you
go
were
ahead.
like you were like instrumental in the, I'm assuming, like shaping of Side, and what like the behemoth it's become probably had something to do with the lessons that you learned along the way, right?
Yeah, that was the coolest time. Imagine 7 top producing real estate agents in a space with a room full of engineers going, "We wanna build this, we wanna build that," and it was just the best of times back then.
That's super interesting. So how long has Navigate been around now?
So Navigate is in its 8th year with Side, 9 years, a year independently on our own.
Oh, wow. Okay. And Navigate specifically being one of the first, I guess, teams or brokerages that existed in the Side model, what does your guys' model look like? So, in terms of agents are coming to work with you guys because of blank, I think a lot of people, especially our listeners, are always trying to figure out like how to effectively communicate what their value is to the marketplace from a recruiting standpoint. What is or excuse me, not Side, but what does Navigate's model look like? And how are you guys presenting that to the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, we have a brokerage and then we have a team. So we offer
Mm.
2 things. We offer the independent agent an opportunity to kind of connect with all of our technology, our support, our training, our education, and then run their own teams. And then we have my team, the Kelly Griggs team, which is, a high lead producing team. And so we've got 2 things kind of happening under the brand. There's really a space for anyone in real estate at Navigate if you are part of our culture, right? If we're all striving for the same things.
Okay. This is a really good segue. And I think that a lot of teams I'm seeing now, especially like team merge models like you guys, right? Where there's two different models running concurrently. Correct me if I'm wrong. The reason for doing that is you want to have a journey or a path that any agent can come in, regardless if they're newer and looking for the team level of support and leads and training and all that stuff. But also these independent agents that want to come in and leverage your guys' tech stack and your support system and your culture and all that stuff. The idea is to have two models concurrently so that you can offer something to pretty much anyone as long as they fit from a culture standpoint. Is that right?
That is 100% right.
Cool. You said something there that was super important, right? People that match your culture. My understanding and my exposure I've had to navigate, you guys have a very unique culture that I know you work super hard at, right? And I think that a lot of team leaders, I don't want to say struggle with culture, but it's like a buzzword right now in our space. Like our culture is so important. And I don't think anyone's ever really talking about like the tactical things of how you develop a culture, right? How you nurture it, how you keep it going. So what does the culture at Navigate look like? Like, how do you determine if when you're interviewing someone, they are a culture fit?
That's a great question. So we from the gate display our core values. They are a little bit unique. We really openly talk about who we are. We're very specific about that, which is a little bit controversial. For example, one of the things that we say is we believe in accountability. We believe in a higher power, and that is kind of shocking when you're working in that space. But if you were to then be hired at Navigate and then you found that out after you were here, that kind of also feels a little bit misleading. So we're completely transparent. We actually post our core values on the board. We believe in always doing the right thing. We believe in exploiting each other's greatnesses, which means if
Mm.
you do something really well, we
Yeah,
want to learn from you. So come in with an open share mindset so that, you can help others, iron sharpens iron, level up their real estate business while someone else helps you in maybe an area where you're weak.
got it. So it sounds like these core values and stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, they're communicated early and frequently. So
Yes.
during the interview process, how quickly are you getting these core values in front of people during the interview process? Does it happen interview one? Does it happen interview two? Like, how quickly are you getting that in front of them?
Yeah. Well, thanks to you and Humanize, we do a little bit of speed dating on that first date just to kind of
Sure.
hit some touch points. And then when we bring them in, it's like the first thing we start with. We want to know before we go through that deck, if this is something that they're going to have buy-in with. Then we also invite them to our our office meeting. So we do a Zoom meeting every Tuesday at 9, and then we have an
Mm,
in-person meeting that follows. But we allow people to hear the collective voices from the community to see if that is a culture fit. It doesn't matter what your personality trait is or what your spiritual beliefs are. It's just that we all need to know and how to work together with those things. For example, if you're a high C, you don't want to be called out at the office meeting and asked how you're doing things, right? You
sure.
want to present your information in writing. So we're just very mindful. We make them do a disc profile test before they even come in for the interview so that
Mm,
we can show them exactly what we can do. And we get, like, if you look at a disc profile, I can already tell you if you're going to succeed or fail being in a team model. So we might then push and shift you to, an indie agent position at our firm
got it.
because you can still tap into the leadership, you can still be part of the trainings, but just not take leaves and be held at such a high accountability for turning them.
Got it. So during the interview process, you mentioned something I think is important. So disc assessments are a big part of what you do. And I think the $1 million question that I hear a lot of team leaders kind of wrestling with is like, what type of disc profile does well? And everyone's looking for this kind of magic one size fits all. Have you guys found a specific type of disc profile that works really well inside your guys' team? Or is it more of like, hey, we look for a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Like, what does that look like?
Well, at the company, every disc profile works, right? Because we've learned to evolve ourselves to be able to coach and train and nurture based on the needs of the other person that we're interacting with. But on the team, we definitely have an avatar and we're actually working to define that even more. I think a person that's on the team needs to be a little bit more of a mid D because they have to have the drive to pick up the phone and make the calls.
Sure.
The person on the team also has to have enough eye that they can actually be entertaining and have personality when you're meeting a stranger at the door to let them in. Um, and then we look to have a moderate amount of S so that we are going to have a loyal person on the team that's not going to, leave after we train them and give them a bunch of leads.
Sure.
So I would say that's more of the avatar is like at least a mid D, a little bit on the I. We don't want them too high on the I because then they become very emotional. So
Yeah.
we've got this like little perfect candidate here.
Yeah, does it look something like this in terms of the breakdown? So like this is a
Yeah.
system called Insight, so it's very similar, but mine is super high D, moderate I, and then the green I think is like caring. Do you actually give a shit, right? And then
Stabilization, stable.
I obviously don't care about the details at all, right? It's at the very bottom of stack. So something similar to that, it sounds
Right.
like in some way, shape, or form. Um, okay, so that's awesome. I think that's important because a lot of, again, everyone's looking for like the one size fits all. And I always tell people that it's not one size fits all because I've occasionally found agents that are like not a driver really at all, a little bit, but not a really at all. They've super high S, super high C, and for whatever reason, they crush as an agent, right? So it sounds like there's a lot of like, I don't want to say spot approvals, but flexibility in it, right? Because if someone's a good fit, they're a good fit, regardless if it's a tactical or exact fit for what that profile they're looking for. Let's talk about the culture a little bit because I've gotten the chance to kind of witness your guys' culture firsthand and see how it goes. You guys are doing some really interesting things from a culture perspective to nurture it, I guess, right? It's not just like hey, we talk about our culture and it continues to thrive. What does a week look like at Navigate in terms of things you're doing with the agents to kind of sustain this culture and continue to develop it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to start maybe on a macro level and then kind of
Yeah,
zoom in if that's
please.
okay. So, just
Yeah.
like you have a business plan, we actually have a culture plan for the year.
Mm,
So, if you don't take the time to figure out how to keep your company healthy, right, then it's like doing nothing at all. And doing nothing at all is actually creating a culture. And a lot of
Sure.
people kind of say, well, when I get time, I'll work on those things. So we like to plan enough interaction with the team so that they're learning to communicate their strengths and weaknesses outside of being on the job. Because the fact of the matter, when you're on a team, sometimes you have to pass the ball and you can't just keep passing it to one person. So you need to work on team relationships. And so we'll have really fun events that are outside of the office. A quick
Mm,
example is on Easter, we have this ridiculous Easter egg hunt at our ranch where we've got tons of prizes and money buried in the backyard and they're competing over it. We have a meal, we break bread and we do things like that. We have the holidays, things that we do with the agents that are super fun. But we really focus on bringing in coaches to talk about mindset, especially
mm,
in those months where things start to slow down and you start to think, oh, is it just me? Bringing people in to just kind of remind people about our abundant mindset here at Navigate that are not me. Right. And so all of this is kind of planned on a calendar. And then on a weekly basis, we do make sure that we're touching the agents at least once a week and requiring that they actually participate in a meeting. COVID kind of changed that to a
sure.
virtual meeting. So we're doing that. And then holistically, as the team, we do take a lunch break together every day. So that is
T-
something that is really important. I was a former chef, and so we designed our office to be like a home. So we've got a kitchen that's in the heart of it, a commercial kitchen,
yeah.
and then a living room set up and a loft. And so there's just spaces that are designed for human connection.
It seems like you're a poker player, a professional chef, a lender, a real estate team leader, and see, you've done a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
I took from this, Kelly, what everything you just said. I think a lot of team leaders, and you'll probably resonate with this, they fall in the like everything has to be focused on the client, right? When they're thinking about events and doing things like that, it's like, oh, well, we're doing pictures with Santa for all of our customers. We're throwing these client appreciation parties, all this stuff. That's fantastic. I think that a lot of team leaders could take a page out of your playbook, which is you're doing those types of events, but you're also doing events specifically for your clients, which are your agents partially, right? You're still in production, still selling a lot of real estate, but you're like niching it down and focusing on things to make your agents feel good too, right? Which I
right.
think pays dividends. And I'm not hearing a whole lot of that in the marketplace now.
Yeah, we actually talk about it in that interview process. That's part of our presentation is we have two customers, the client and you. Whether you're on the team or whether you're an indie agent, we want to make sure that your needs are being met. So here's how you reach out, raise a hand when you need that help and support. So it's very
Got it.
important. One of
Yeah.
the one of the things that I see that team leaders really could take some time to develop and talk about is you know, lead the culture in your company based on your unique abilities, right? So
Mm.
for me, I like to tell stories. There's that saying, that famous quote that says, how do you get them to build a ship? Give them a longing for the sea. And that's really the culture that we have here is how do I get people to produce is, give them a longing to tell stories about how home ownership actually changes lives and creates generational wealth. You know, this is how we helped our daughter buy her first home. This is what we paid. These are the improvements we made. This is what it's worth. My kid now has, $250,000 in equity and no student loan debt. It's things like that. It's real life applicable ways to change lives through real estate. And when you do that and you create that environment, that's something that motivates people in a way that just standing in front of them telling them to sell more houses doesn't.
Yeah. I think this is so high level and so good. And it's so tactical in terms of like what someone could take away from this. I think the simplest way to boil this down of everything you just said is find ways to make sure that your agents feel like they're taken care of too, right? It's really easy in the ivory tower that we as team leaders find ourselves in to just stay focused on, hey, make phone calls, sell real estate, have conversations, do all of the tactical stuff. But unless they feel like they're a part of a broader mission or doing something that matters, that's only going to go so far. right? And like that's what I took from that, which is awesome. Um, from a culture standpoint, Kelly, like something I hear from a lot of our teams and different leaders in the marketplace now is like, there's times when someone might not necessarily fit the culture, right? You hire them, they end up not working out or not fitting. How are you handling those situations? Because that's delicate, right? Having to see someone out the door. And I'm always a big fan of like taking action when you have people that like don't fit from a culture standpoint. How are you guys approaching that? Because I'm sure at your scale, you've encountered that before.
Yeah. It is the biggest challenge that I think that we face. Sometimes someone, for example, I'm talking about a real life situation right now, comes in super strong. They're on the phones, they're dialing, and then life happens to them and they start to go on a downward spiral. So we immediately bring them in for a coaching session. Hey, I noticed that you're struggling on calls and you don't have that energy or that vibe in your voice anymore. Talk to me about that. Tell me what's going on. Okay, and then we put together like a performance plan, like, hey, how can we support you so that when you show up in this door, through those doors, you're not bringing whatever you're going through, at home, because we try to keep the energy in the office very upbeat to the point where we will just crank up some music and do a mandatory dance break in the office when we feel like people are stressed out and a lot of tension. And so when we have someone like that we can't correct and we can't modify, we have to cut bait because that one bad apple can just ruin the entire day where the next thing you know, somebody else is starting to feel a little blue and a little down. And oh yeah, and I've got a problem too. And it quickly manifests into something that you have to stop. So you have to be very quick to fire, which is very hard when you care so deeply about people.
Sure. Yeah, I think again, boiling it down to like tactical for our listeners in terms of like how to go and actually apply this. What I heard in there was speed and like grace, right? Which usually
Mhm.
don't go hand in hand. I think a lot of the time with as many things as we have going on as team leaders, we just kind of want to kick the can down the street. Hopefully it gets better. Hopefully this person improves. You're saying do the opposite. You're saying right when you start to notice a slowdown
Yeah.
or a culture fit not really fitting, get in front
Right.
of it, schedule a meeting, have a conversation. What can we do to help you? And if for whatever reason they're not showing improvement, it quickly turns into a, hey, you're not a good fit for us right now, and that's okay. I wish you the best. Stage right, left,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it's hard to do, especially when you need agents. Like we have too many leads, and we need these bodies. And I think that's where we get in trouble is we have people stay too long. One of the other things that we talk about is every single person at our company needs to be coachable, including myself.
Mm.
I have 3 coaches right now.
Yep.
And so we encourage them to seek the same. And the reality is that if they're not coachable, they can't last. And so we remind them each week, especially at the team meetings, we'll say, "Are you coachable?" And like
Yeah.
have them think about the things that have happened this week and what did you learn from it? So as long as you're like bringing it out to the open, you can almost correct that person from going bad without making them feel isolated and they're putting
Sure.
on a performance plan.
Yeah.
And you can open up the space for other people to talk about what they're going through because real estate is freaking hard. And if you're
Yeah.
ready to close a big transaction and the buyer walks at closing, you deserve a cookie and a hug, from your team leader. It sucks. And that's
Yeah.
okay. But teaching them to be resilient and telling them that this is part of the process, that's where we're seeing lasting success is that our culture is completely about transparency. In
How
fact, a
did you?
lot of times go ahead, sorry. What were you going to
No, no,
say?
no. Keep going. Keep going.
A lot of times I start my meetings like, "Hi, this is how I screwed up this week." Right?
I
It's
love
just
that.
being like totally transparent. Like I feel all the feels too.
How did you get good at that? Like, that is not something that comes like hearing you talk about this stuff. I'm like, shit, I got to fall on this sword a little bit more as myself as a leader, right? How did you get good at that? Was it repetition? Was it reading? Was it working with, like, how did you get good at having those difficult conversations and being vulnerable with your team?
Yeah, it was through coaching. I
Okay.
am a high D, high I. So, I joke and say I am bipolar professionally. I'm just a complete driver. And then it's like, hi, let's go out to lunch, like after
Sure.
I rip your flesh off. And so as I burned through executive assistant after executive assistant, I said, maybe it's actually me and not them. Right. And I had to go into a 4-year journey of coaching to be able to. I've always been really compassionate and humble, but with business, it's like, let's just get it done. Like, why do we have to keep talking about it? Let's just move.
Yep.
And so being patient and being more of a listener and trying to be more understanding, I think was part of it. But to be brutally honest, for some team leaders that are also out there, we started this company because we were wanting to not be lone wolves, and we wanted to have a tribe of people that had the same common goals as us. And what happens is you spend too much time and energy working on culture, right? And you don't grow as a company. The balance is learning how to scale your culture. It's learning how to add more people on a consistent basis so that it's not so shocking when you've got this one beautifully performing team, and then all of a sudden you add 2 new people and it's like them against them, right? It's just this constant steady flow of bringing people in and releasing people out so that the
Mm.
people that are on the team know that if they're not a culture fit, they just watched you shoot a hostage, basically.
Yeah. Shooting hostages. I like that term. I use that term too. It's a little brutal, but it's very realistic. Um, this is all great, Kelly. In terms of, let me ask you this, and kind of in closing this, what's next for Navigate, right? Like going into 2025, we were talking about transparency and stuff. And I think every team has things to work on, right? And every team's got things that they're thinking about going into like Q1 of 2025. What's next for Navigate? What are you guys focusing on in Q1 of 2025? Like, what's the big goal this next year?
The big goal is to scale and to really
Okay.
grow as a team. So we are looking to double the size of our company. Right now, we're at about 47. And
Yep.
so we'd like to double that.
And I'm assuming that means scaling leadership because it's not just you doing
Yeah,
everything.
correct.
Okay.
And
So
that's the
how are you
hardest
guys?
thing is that when you are an independent team leader and you just have a couple agents, culture is so easy. And you're like, why am I watching this podcast? Right. But it's when you get to those bigger numbers, like as soon as you go past 10, it's definitely something you have to have a plan for.
Yeah. So how are you guys scaling that? So in terms of leadership, it sounds like as you guys grow, I'm assuming you're scaling leadership team and stuff. How are you
Right.
guys planning to scale leadership? Does it involve sales manager, training that person, coaching that person up? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we recently hired our sales manager. He's phenomenal. Thank you, because Human Eyes helped us. And he's fantastic, and we're so blessed. And then we hired another director of listings, and she
Mm,
is amazing. So what we're doing is we're really sewing into the leadership and making sure that those relationships are protected first. Right? Are
mm,
those relationships healthy? We're hiring this coach that's helping us work on a new type of disc
mm.
profile. I won't advertise it until I go through it, but how those people perform and why. And so that we're going to work together. We've always really coached to this is who I am in the disc, this is who you are. You need to talk to me in this way. For example, I just can't walk into someone's office that's a high C and say, hey, tell me about blah, blah, blah. Right? They need an email saying, hey, I need you to outline these items and then get back to me before they have a conversation. Everything that they want to say needs to be in writing. So if
Sure.
you don't understand your leadership team and how they're working, then you're not going to be successful. So we're spending a lot of time working on that right now.
Got it. Yeah, I think that that's something that a lot of teams struggle with is like team leader, people like you and I, Kelly, like I'm a if I can do it, I'm going to do it person. Right. And that
Yeah,
doesn't scale because when you have 40, 50, 70, 100 agents, it's not something that you can just white knuckle anymore. Right. It's something that
right.
you have to have mini Kellys and mini Chris's out there, like doing the bidding and helping drive the ship and helping steer and stuff. So it sounds like you're pouring into these leaders so that you can start to remove yourself a little bit more from the day to day and start to focus more on the macro level stuff. Is that
And
accurate?
then, yes, and 100% allowing them to do the job no
Mm,
matter the outcome. An example is that we're in the process of transitioning someone off the team and they came to me directly And
Ooh,
I had to say, no, go, you have to talk to your sales manager. So it's like allowing them to be empowered as a team lead. Oh, you don't want anyone to say anything negative about your company because it's a small town. You're trying to protect your brand all the time. But
yep.
protect your brand by sewing into your leadership and into your culture, because then it, you're bulletproof. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody will believe it because it's
Yeah.
authentic.
I always tell people that the fastest way for new leadership to learn is by screwing up, right? They
Mhm.
have to
Yeah.
have the bumps, right? If they're not
Yeah.
used to being in a leadership position, if we just fix everything for them at all times, they don't have the coping skills or the ability to handle it themselves, which turns into us just doing other people's jobs and using them like sock puppets, right? Which definitely does not scale. So awesome, Kelly. Well, this was awesome. Thank you for sharing everything about Navigate. For anyone that's listening to this that wants to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way? Can they like shoot you a DM on Instagram? What's the
Yeah.
easiest way for
At
people to get in
Kelly
touch with you?
Griggs Realtor on Insta, just
Love
Kelly
that.
Griggs on Facebook, or just kellygriggs.com.
Okay, perfect. Well, Kelly, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today, and I'll see you soon. Later.